Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of VetHub, where we talk about all things veteran related and resources for dependents and spouses and all things in that nature. And today I have another special guest for you, and her name is Denise, and she works here at FGCU at the Career Advising. And today we're going to talk about how to help you build a beautiful resume and some things you should really know. Let's get right into it. Hello.
Hi, Lauren. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Of course. Thanks for letting me do this, and hopefully we could help a lot of other veterans out there in the community. Tell me a little bit more of where should we start when somebody says you need a resume and you just got out of the military?
The first thing to think about when you're trying to build a resume is think about what your story is, what you want to share, what your skills are, what your attributes are. I tell my students to just take a blank piece of paper and just brainstorm everything from the past 5, 10, 15 years, depending on how old you are. Just put it on paper. The type of job you had, the name of the employer, city, state, your dates, and the skills and things you accomplished, because that'll start getting it out of your head onto a piece of paper.
I like that idea too. It'll definitely put a lot of things into perspective as to what needs to be said on the piece of paper.
Absolutely. And it could be multiple pages. Some people will come to me with, 6 or 7 pages and say, here's everything I did. And then we'll start to go through it to figure out what that story is, what kind of career they're looking for. And then we start to tighten it up to a really solid 1 or 2 page resume.
And explain to me what are some of the key things so say that somebody does come in with 6 to 7 pages and they're like, I want all of this on my resume. What's something that you would let them know?
We can only go so small in a font and margins, right? So we do have limited space, but I try to look at things like what are your experiences that have the skills related to what you do in the future? We try and group different jobs into sets. So if you've been in military service for 5, 10, 15 years, we're not going to put everything in there. We'll start with the most recent and then figure out where we kind of cherry pick. Because what we're trying to do is show an employer that you have the skills to do whatever job you're looking to apply for. And sometimes that might mean you have multiple resumes.
Oh, okay. So speaking of multiple resumes, let's say that I'm applying for 2 different jobs and that require different job descriptions. So that means I would have to tailorize this one resume and then tailorize this other resume to meet the criteria that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's what I recommend. So typically, I try to build a really solid total resume. Some people will call it a universal resume, some people will call it their life resume, and then you can kind of pick and choose what sections, what experiences might fit better to the jobs that you're posting for. If we do it right the first time, then instead of having to recreate new documents, we just need to do a little bit of tweaking, maybe in a profile section or adjust languaging a little bit. So it depends on the scope of employment history somebody has, and then also the scope of how many or different types of jobs and industries they're looking at.
And what's a big takeaway that you could offer to a veteran advice wise when they're just sitting at their desk and they're just like, oh my gosh, I wrote everything down, now what? What would be their next step?
I think the next step for veterans, and I'm always challenged when I work with veterans here at school, is to get them to not undersell their skills. They'll say, I just did this. And I encourage them to take that word just out of their sentence, right? Everything you do has a skill associated with it. Maybe it's not a skill you want to talk about, right? We do have combat veterans that are challenged to tell their story, but we can get creative in highlighting some of their leadership and teamwork skills without divulging information, without giving too much to an employer or sharing stuff that an employer doesn't need to know.
Because a lot of us, we don't want to put, oh yeah, I was a combat veteran. No, put that on there. There's stuff that you did that translates to civilian life.
Yeah.
Just like you said, we reword it differently. Right. It doesn't have to be something particular,
Right.
but just
And when we focus on skills, you can Google on the internet, top skills that employers are looking for, and all of the skills that veterans have: leadership, teamwork, critical thinking, situational awareness, ability to adjust on the fly, flexibility, time management. Taking orders, but then also being able to um, give orders too, right? And being able to work with a team and then manage some of those people issues. All that stuff is what our employers are looking for. And most employers will say, if you've got all of these soft skills and all of these leadership teamwork skills, I can teach you the nuts and bolts of the job, because it's harder to teach somebody to be a good leader, or it's harder to teach them to be able to manage projects or critically think. I can teach you how to use Excel, or I can teach you how to be a software engineer, right? It's those other skills that are more ingrained to us, and more of our personal attributes that veterans definitely have more of an opportunity to develop.
could you share with us some best practices when a veteran is creating their resume after they've word vomited onto a piece of paper and they're not underselling themselves? What would you say they could do after?
A couple of things to think about is, you want to start with as a Word document. A lot of employers use applicant tracking systems, or ATS, and if there's too much color, too many columns, if you're using some templates, they don't feed as well as a blank Word document. Plus, a blank Word document is going to give you the most space to tell your story. So if you get your 7-page document brainstorming down to 3, we can probably move some things around to get it to a solid 2 pages. So I would definitely start as a blank Word document, keep the fonts between 10.5 and 11. Half-inch margins is as small as you want to go. For non-traditional students, for veterans, for older people building resumes, having a profile on top that basically tells a very brief synopsis of who they are and what they're looking for is helpful. A profile statement will say to an employer, here's what kind of job or industry I'm looking for, even though my resume might not line up exactly, but it helps the employer kind of get a good feel for what they should be looking at the resume.
Okay.
Neatness always counts. So I suggest that you have people review it. Remember that everybody's going to have their own opinion, but it's your document. And so if you're comfortable with the format, it's easy to read. There's no spelling errors. You're talking about your accomplishments. What skill do you want to highlight? How you demonstrated it? What was the result? That's kind of a consistent accomplishment statement, or we call them bullets on a resume. Then you're going to have a really solid document. That's your baseline. And depending on the job description, you might need to tweak it a little bit.
So say that a veteran doesn't really have anybody to look over their resume, is there a software out there that helps them gauge, or I don't know, helps them in any way, shape, or form that a person could possibly help them, but let's just say that they don't have that option?
Yes, so there's different resources available if you want a person, some paid, some unpaid. But from a technology perspective, a lot of people are starting to use AI to build their resumes. I use a tool called JobScan because it will compare a resume to a job post and tell me if there's a word match. Is there a way that I should use a different languaging than I did because it's a better match to the job post? I would caution though, especially with the AI piece of it, this is your document, you own it. So if you're using AI to help you with the languaging, remember that it has to be your languaging. So you don't ever want to copy and paste whatever ChatGPT or some other AI tool is telling you. You want to take a look at it and say, oh, that's good languaging. Let me see how I can rewrite that so it's my languaging and it fits my circumstance. Because the minute an employer thinks you lied on your resume or you use ChatGPT to build it and they catch you on that, you're not going to get the job. And so, yes, they're great tools as a starting point, or to compare it to a job description. But remember, employers are going to see that and they're not going to hire you. So it needs to come from you and you need to be able to back it up.
How would you just finish the resume? How do you know when to stop?
Oh my goodness, that is such a great question. I probably would not go past maybe 15 years of experience. If you are an older veteran and you've got 20, 30, 40 years of experience behind you, stop at 10, 15 or 20. Unless there's something that you did in your younger days that you're going back to, I would not put all that stuff in there. I would just be super critical, right? Put on an employer hat and say, what is an employer going to want to know from me? Because that's going to help you figure out when to stop. Definitely the rule is usually 20 years. I kind of like 15. If you've got stuff that you think is important but it doesn't fit on the paper, throw it in LinkedIn. You've got more than enough space to put things there. Employers will look. But again, it's all about your story condensed in a format that an employer is going to take the time to read it and be able to see how you would be a good fit for a job. So there's an art and a science to doing it. In closing, it's always good to have somebody work with you on your resume, whether it's somebody that's got a professional background in it or somebody that knows you well that can really challenge you to pick out those skills and experiences that are important. If you don't have anybody, I would look at some of the VA resources to see if they've got job support, resume support. Your local community may have some kind of career support. Most states have a career department. In Florida, we have career source, which helps all folks looking for jobs. They do have a veteran section for them, so they can offer support. Local universities may have some support. Your alma mater may have some support. So there should be resources out there that you can take advantage of to help you do this. And I guarantee you, once you do it the first time and get it done, then you've got a solid document that you can just keep updating as you grow in whatever career you're looking for or whatever direction you want to go into, all the way to retirement. And then you get to retire that one out too.
I will leave down below in the description a list of resources that Denise has mentioned and some more resources out there to help you build a beautiful resume.
So if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to. Lauren will put my LinkedIn address below. And please reach out if you've got any quick questions. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thanks so much for having me. I hope that this information's been helpful and have a great day.
Well, thank you so much for letting me come into your office and interview you. I'm sure a lot of veterans will get good information out of this.
Good.
So, thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on another episode of Vet Hub, and hopefully that you took something out of this episode, and we will have more for you next week. Stay tuned.